Hello, Jess. Thank you for coming on today. I don't think you need any introduction to the British friends from the UK. We obviously know you from WTF1, but if you'd like to tell us a bit more about yourself to start off with, and then we get into Formula One chat.
That sounds great. Well, first off, thanks. I mean, it feels weird that anybody would know who I am. It's always still a strange thing that people would even know me. Or I remember the first time I ever got spotted in real life, and that was really strange. But thanks, Raz, so much for having me on. You're right. Most people will know me from my days at WTF1 working with Tommy and Matty. And now I work for Autosport and Motorsport.com, making some interesting content, I hope. But first and foremost, Raz, I'm a Formula One fan, and I just love talking about Formula One. So, as you say, why don't we do some more of that?
Yes, anytime. I'm really glad you're on today. But first of all, I want to ask you, how did you get into Formula One?
Sure. So I'm actually from a village in Northamptonshire called Brixworth, which
Yes.
you might have heard of.
Yes.
That's where they make the Mercedes high performance power chains. So they've done that for years. Before they were making it for McLaren Mercedes when they were Ilmor Engineering, and then they got rebranded as Mercedes. So my village was at the very centre of motorsport. So I was surrounded by it my entire life, even from the minute I was born, which was kind of cool. And I remember at the end of the season, the McLaren drivers would come to Brixworth.
Yes.
And it was like the most exciting part of my entire year because I got to potentially see. I think I saw Jenson Button once, but that was it. But I did try and go hunting for them around the village, unsuccessfully.
Did ya?
Yeah, but it was my big brother actually who got me mainly into Formula One, and he actually took me to my very first Grand Prix weekend as well. So he was determined that I would love motorsport as much as he did. So I've got him to thank for it.
Great story, Jess. Actually, my love for motorsport started when I was 6 years old, and I'm 35, turning 36 on the 19th of August. So I've been watching Formula One for a while, actually. So obviously you start with WTF, you start with WTF1, but how did that all come about?
Now that is, I think a lot of people think that people that work in motorsport knew what they wanted to do, went after what they wanted to do, went to university, studied all this stuff. That's definitely not what happened to me. So I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I actually ended up going to university and studying English literature because I thought that's the easiest way to get a job, is to have a really kind of easy transferable degree, and maybe when I get to university I'll work out what I want to do. And when I got to my final year and I was about to graduate, I thought, well, I should probably get a job, but I still had no idea what I really wanted to do. And a friend of mine worked at a publishing house called Haymarket, and it was an area I'd always been interested in. I always loved media. I loved watching, obviously, what was going on with social media and things like that. So I thought, well, publishing might be a really good avenue for me to go on. So I started there. I started in sales, selling adverts at the back of magazines. You know, when you get a magazine and it's got
Yes.
adverts at the back, that was my first job. But in this publishing house, there was a brand called Autosport, which obviously any F1 fan knows the name of. And I basically pestered my way to work on the brand as a salesperson. And in 2015, I got my shot. So my first job in motorsport was as a salesperson. selling annoying banner ads and magazine adverts.
I,
Yeah, so that was how I got into it. And then I basically just saw how big social media was and how there was nothing really in motorsport that was doing anything in social media. And so I joined Car Throttle, and because that was all about social media. They were massive on YouTube. And so I actually left motorsport, took a risk, went to work for an automotive company, but within 6 months of me working there, they announced that they were buying WTF1, and I'd been a massive fan of WTF1 like ever since it started. Absolutely loved it. And then I basically just worked my way through Car Throttle to work on WTF1 and work with Tommy, and and the rest kind of was history. So it was all about taking chances and finding opportunities that allowed me to find my passion, which was always Formula One. So I think it's a mixture of timing, luck, but also just going for those opportunities when they present themselves and not looking back.
I mean, yeah, I can totally relate to that story, but for me, because I used to suffer with massive anxiety, and because I've got cerebral palsy, I actually, Formula One helped me through my daily life, sort of thing. And back 5 years ago, I suffered labyrinthitis, like really bad ear infections. I think Martin Brundle must have had something similar in can't remember what season it was, but that was that race when Massa crashed. He had some vertigo or something. Anyway, so because my doctors couldn't figure out what it was, because the normal tests you can't do, because I obviously can't walk. So it took me two years to sort of find out what it was, and then because and then I had medical anxiety as well, so I didn't actually I stopped speaking for like 3 days or something, and then my doctor said to me, Raz, I know you can understand me, but we need to get you speaking again. And I know you love Formula One, and bear in mind, I didn't even talk to my doctor, who I've known for 15 years, because I thought it wasn't going to make sense. So the doctor actually said to me, get yourself a camera and put it on and talk about Formula One. So I thought to myself, screw this, if I'm going to do it, I might as well put it on YouTube.
Well, thank goodness he told you to do that, Raz, because otherwise you wouldn't be here doing this.
Yeah, I mean, it really helped. It really helped me out now, and the opportunities I had or still have, because I can't believe the support. I mean, when I tweeted Matt, or even Tomo F1, who we both know. And Josh's Ravel as well. I sort of thought to myself, they're never going to reply. And all of a sudden, Matt actually did reply to me. At first, I thought it was a joke. I really didn't think it was real. But that really made my day, and sort of the support I've been getting from Formula One really makes me feel happy. I've got no anxieties, no depressions. So Formula One has done a great deal for me.
I think it's the Formula One community, especially on Twitter, is really special. It's a place that you see a lot of special moments happen, a lot of coming together, And I think that's such a powerful thing, and one of the reasons why I love social media and I love Twitter. I mean, there's also a lot of not so nice things that happen on Twitter, and some people that maybe aren't as supportive. But I think it's brilliant. I mean, it's brought us together. You know,
Yeah.
It's done some fab things. So, but I'm really glad to hear that it's helped with anxiety, because I think a lot of people, even if they're looking to start off in motorsport and they want to maybe start content creating, it can be really daunting to start, and you do think like, well, no one's going to watch my channel, no one's going to want to know what I think. And the thing is like, everybody starts somewhere, right? Everybody had to start from that day one in front of the camera, not knowing what to say, like feeling silly, recording themselves. But I mean, that's exactly where Matty started, and look at him now. He's commentating on Formula 2 this weekend.
Yeah, and I mean, look at you, like, I mean, and as I said, I never thought the people that have actually responded have, that they would respond. I mean, it's like, I've got the likes of Mark Priestley recording with him, and Natalie Pinkham as well, and I just can't believe it, and it's just helped me out so much. But how's lockdown been for you in terms of Formula One, and how have you been coping with lockdown?
Well, it's been really weird for me, because I started this new job the day before we went into lockdown. So it was very much like leaving WTF1 and it all being a bit strange, because everything was about to obviously start with the Formula 1 season, going into a new place and then having no content to talk about or to do, because we went into lockdown. Australia got cancelled. So the team that I work with at the Motorsport Network, half of them I've never met in real life. So that has been an interesting start, or like, that was an interesting start to lockdown for sure. But it's amazing how much you can do remotely, and kind of how you can work together. And I think it also gives you a bit more room to be creative, right? Because you're not dictated by the same old and the race weekend schedule and just kind of churning content. You have to be creative. You have to think outside the box, which I love doing anyway. But yeah, it's been, there have definitely been days, I think it's important to talk, as much as you talk about the good times, you talk about the bad times. There have been some days where I've felt highly kind of anxious or down, or not thinking that I'm doing a good enough job, especially because I'm in a new job. And obviously, it kind of, I think it's really important to try and stay as stimulated as possible. So, I've taken up running, which I never did before. So that's a new one for me. And just trying to stay as positive as possible. But I think it's also important to just acknowledge that there are going to be days where you don't feel so good. And that's when, the community side of things has really come into it for me. I think I put a post up on my Instagram the other day saying I'd had a day where my energy level was like 0, and I didn't want to do anything, and I felt just really down. And I got so many messages from people just telling me nice stories, so positive things that happened to them in lockdown, which made me feel like there's so much goodness going on in the world, because in amongst all of this kind of craziness and uncertainty, there are still so many nice things going on around the world, and that really helped me. So it's just been, it's been a mixture of things, but I'm so excited that Formula One's back, and obviously we had such a good race last week. So, I mean, I guess, let's hope that we've got a good one on this weekend as well.
So, for me, I mean, talking about lockdown for a second, I mean, for me, I mean, I know lockdown isn't good, and the whole COVID thing is absolutely terrible. But for me, and my channel, it's absolutely been like amazing. But also from a wider point of view, as you mentioned, because I'm in a wheelchair, I can't travel that well. So if I was to sort of appear on any channel or anything out in person, I would have to travel there, which is really difficult, kind of. But now with that sort of the whole video conferencing and everything goes down, I think it made it easier. I mean, having said that, I do hope that I'm gonna meet you and Matty and everybody that has helped me in person one day. So if you're ever down in the near Staffordshire, let me know.
Yeah,
And then we
well, hopefully we'll get you to a Grand Prix one day, and we can meet at a Formula One event.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, that's what this is like. Um, this is like my passion is very, I love Formula One, and I can't be a driver, but I can talk about Formula One, and you know, this is my, although I've got my own translation business doing German English German translation as well, but this content creating has that sort of takes up most of my time, and that's where I get the most sort of feedback from. And I mean, I don't even do it for the money, and if I can get a bit of pocket money, yeah, that's great. But because I'm on benefits, but I just do it for the love of the sport, really. So what do you think about the start of the season? Well, how many races do you think we're gonna have?
Well, we've had a good indication today that we should be getting more races confirmed very, very soon. Because obviously we've only got the 8 confirmed so far, haven't we? But we should be getting more, including, and I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are on this, Raz, including Mugello. We might be seeing F1 cars racing at Mugello, which would be, I'm in two minds. I'm in two minds about Mugello. I think I was really fortunate to go to Mugello for the MotoGP last year, and it's an amazing track. It's in the Tuscan hills. It's like beautiful to look at. The way that it's formed is amazing. It's got lots of elevation differences. It's got tight, twisty bits, long, fast bits. It's a really cool circuit. But I'm just not sure it's built for F1 cars. Not modern F1 cars.
No, I agree with you. I would much rather like to see the Hockenheim ring back.
Yeah.
Which is incidentally that's the only race I've ever been to. And I would like to know from you actually. Do you prefer going to a Grand Prix, or do you prefer watching it on TV?
Oh gosh.
Without actually, obviously, without, if you was just watching as a fan,
Yeah.
like without all the, I don't know what you're getting, but you'll probably get all the access and stuff.
I mean, the access is great when you're working a Grand Prix, but actually, we end up watching what everybody else watches at home. You don't really get to watch live racing or live sessions, because when you're working, you need to know what's going on track, which usually means that we were watching the world feed anyway on a TV screen in the media center or something. And that's what the journalists are doing as well. They don't get to watch, really. I mean, sometimes there are some tracks where you can maybe not go too far from the media center, or the media center is over the track and you get to see at least some live action. But for the most part, you're sat in a dark room with screens and like timing screens and the world feed, and that's it. So As much as it is cool to be in amongst it and like in the paddock and talking to people and interviewing drivers, I mean that's obviously as a job pretty cool. But in terms of like as a fan, I mean I've been to a good amount of Grand Prix as a fan, and I don't think there's anything like it. So I think I definitely prefer going to Grand Prix. But the fact is that you're not going to ever really get to go to many than like one a year. So as much as it's really special, you don't really get to do it so often. So
Yeah.
You've got to watch it on TV, haven't you?
Yes. Yes. I mean, I prefer it on TV. Having said that, if Sky or any or anybody else would help me organize everything with the care and everything with my carers and with the hotel with the hoist and everything, if somebody would help me get that organized, I would definitely go. But I will never forget the 30th of October 2013, because that's when I went to Williams.
Right. That's awesome. And isn't that an amazing facility?
Yes.
Go to the museum and everything.
Yes.
It's incredible, isn't it? I think it's sad, isn't it? Because obviously Williams aren't having a great time of it at the moment. But when you go to the museum, you see just how successful they are as a team. And all of the amazing victories that they had and all the amazing drivers they had race for them. And it's such a proud team and a proud heritage. And it's nice to be reminded of that because they're not having a good time of it at the moment, are they?
What do you think is going to happen to them?
Well, obviously, putting part of the team, having an option of putting the team up for sale is kind of a big move. But I think it's the only one that's really going to have them survive in Formula One if they want to keep racing. So as much as it's quite sad to think that it won't be a totally family-run business, I think it's inevitable, and it's the fact of Formula One that small customer teams can't really survive without a huge amount of backing. I mean, we're even seeing McLaren having financial struggles and having to seek investment, and they're McLaren, they're huge.
Exactly.
So it's inevitable, but hopefully, I mean, we've already seen a little bit of their pace this year, and it's looking at least better than last year.
Yeah.
So I just hope that they have a bit of a story like a McLaren where they can at least come back and be slightly competitive. And I can see the T-shirt you're wearing right now, Raz, and I can imagine that you're hoping for pretty much the same.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I would go with this. I really hope that part of the percentage is going to stay in the family, because I think it would kill Frank if it didn't. Because what he's achieved on top of it, despite his excellent, I can't even imagine to comprehend like how he managed that. So I'm really fearing for him if he was to lose that. But as you said, a lot of the teams are struggling. So do you think Formula One could die off as a whole?
I think with all of these things, they evolve, don't they? I mean, I was talking to somebody today about how F1 teams don't really die. They get bought by other outfits or other brands, and they essentially just take the factory, take the people, rebrand it, and come out with a new team. But it's not really a new team. I mean, we saw that with Racing Point. It was bought and kind of rebranded, but it's the same people. It was the same drivers in that case. And so if you think back to Mercedes was Brawn before, and it was Honda before that, and it was BAR before that. So these teams don't really die. It would be extremely sad if the Williams name was to drop out of F1. But in terms of the series as a whole, I mean, F1's got a big job to do in terms of making sure that it doesn't have something happen to it like in WEC, where all the major manufacturers have disappeared because it's just not it's not an exercise they want to carry on in. It doesn't bring in the marketing money. It doesn't bring in, the development that they need to be making for their road cars. So in that sense, F1 has to evolve. But I was talking to Jean-Eric Verne not long ago, and he was basically talking about how potentially Formula One and Formula E will merge or become something very similar. And I think that's what is likely going to happen. Maybe not so much the actual merging of Formula One and Formula E, but Formula One will just evolve. But I can't see it collapsing altogether. I mean, maybe that's wishful thinking as well. Like I don't ever want to imagine a world where there's Formula One. No. But I do think that there will be it'll just change, and people might not like it. It might be a similar thing as when we had in 2014 when we had the hybrid power V6s first introduced. Yeah. But the fact is, it's that, or the sport doesn't exist, the series doesn't exist. So what would you rather? No Formula One, or at least some form of racing that is at least recognisable as Formula One? Interesting
thoughts. But maybe you know a bit more about this. I mean, how from what I know. Formula E have got exclusivity rights with the technology for like 50 years or something? I mean, how does that work?
I mean, they've obviously put that in place to kind of make sure that Formula One doesn't just switch to Formula E. But I think, as with all these things, as time evolves, the FIA will probably or F1 will find a loophole in some form. I mean, they're talking about moving. Formula One aren't talking about moving, but there are rumours that they'll move to hydrogen power, which is and there are some cars at the moment that are being developed that are zero emissions and run on hydrogen fuel. So it will change itself. It will evolve itself into whatever makes sense, because that is the only way that businesses as a whole, because you forget, like, Formula One is a business, that it will evolve, it will adapt, it will find new routes in order to make sure it survives. So I think there is, you are correct in bringing up the fact that Formula E has the exclusivity over electric powered racing, but I don't know how long that would stand for. If it was between saving Formula One, I think there would be a discussion to be had there further down the line, if that was ever a problem.
So I want to know from you, who do you think is the best driver of all times, and why?
So we did a lot of content around in Formula One over on the Motorsport YouTube channel, and one of the debates that we had on mine and Luke Smith podcast, Is It Me podcast, we talked about, actually, is there such a thing as the greatest of all time? Because I guess when you've got a sport like motorsport that has been around for as long as it has, and it's to do with technology and engineering advancements, is it fair to compare, say, a Lewis Hamilton with a Michael Schumacher, with an Ayrton Senna, with it gets really complicated. I guess from a personal perspective, and again, like we discussed this to much debate over on the YouTube channel, and a lot of people were not very happy with us at all for having this debate even in the first place. I do think, and bearing in mind he's not finished yet, I think we will probably label Lewis Hamilton as the greatest driver of all time for a number of reasons. I think what he's overcome to get to where he is, obviously his successes, the records that he is holding and breaking. I mean, Schumacher has only a few of his records still standing, thanks to Lewis. But I think it's about. It's really difficult because if you look at Schumacher and his involvement in turning around Ferrari, because when he joined Ferrari were not in a great place, and he was really intrinsic to that. So you could say, that's really important in a driver becoming the greatest of all time. But I guess similarly, when Lewis Hamilton first joined Mercedes, everybody thought he was mad. Why have you left McLaren for this midfield team? And now he's just consistently won with them. So yeah, it's a tough one. It's a debate, I think, that will go on forever.
Yes.
But I think personally, we will be saying that Lewis is the greatest of all time.
Yes. I mean, I'm apart from Williams, I'm a massive Michael Schumacher fan.
Yeah.
And I know Matty is as well. And here's a thing that you might be able to organise. I mean, if you, I want to know who. I would love to find out. Maybe we can do it as a maybe we can do it as a feature or something. But who knows more about Mike Schumacher, Matty or me?
You should have done a quiz when you interviewed him to see just how much he really knows.
Well, I only came up with that. I mean, I might drop that hint to good old Tommy when I interview him when I do it when he gets back to me to do some recording. But one other thing that I wanted to know from you, and I want your opinion on this. Do you think Vettel has failed at Ferrari?
Do I think he's failed?
Yes.
That's. I don't think it's as clean cut as that. I think Ferrari have also failed him. So I think the big Vettel is that he hasn't really, bar maybe 2018. He's not seemed very comfortable with that car, and as much as again, I think when we were talking about greatest drivers, I think another mark of a great driver is their ability to jump from team to team and still get success. And Vettel's never seemed comfortable in that Ferrari, and so that's a bit of a failing on his part because he's not adapted his driving style to suit the car. But it's also a failing of Ferrari. He's not given a car that suits his driving style. So it's been a kind of it's been a mismatch from the get go, and I think it was very much it was a fairy tale, wasn't it? He wanted to emulate Michael Schumacher, he wanted to win a Ferrari, and it just it never happened. And now we're in a situation where I would say both of them have failed each other in this bitterness that is now kind of being played out this season, which we heard today. I think Raikkonen made a comment that actually it's not as bad as everybody's making out, and obviously the media loves to stir things up, doesn't it? But they've both taken kind of swipes at each other, even in the first round of the season, and they've got a whole season to get through, unless for some reason everybody plays musical chairs halfway through the season and we get Ricciardo leaving Renault to go to McLaren, and we get Sainz in that Ferrari, and we put Vettel somewhere, or he leaves. They've got to get through a whole season of trying to tie the season up together. So I think there's been failing on both parts, which has led to this really kind of sad end to what should have been an amazing partnership. But yeah, do you think he'd go back to Red Bull? Could you see that happening?
Me personally, no.
Okay.
Because I know there's been some, even today, before we did this, or before we started this, I read, I don't know who broke it or something, but apparently he did an interview with Red, with the Austrian TV station, and apparently one of the reasons cited by Dr. Helmut Marko, the good old doctor himself, he said that Vettel would be too expensive.
Yeah.
Or something. Now, Vettel apparently said that money is not an issue for him, but I can't see him playing waterboy to Max Verstappen.
That would be quite a fiery partnership, wouldn't it?
And I think, because Vettel, I mean, personally, I think Vettel was always doomed, was always gonna fail at Ferrari. If you can say that 14 Grand Prix victories are failure, obviously they're not failure, but what I mean is the German media have, especially in Germany, they always can he emulate Mike Schumacher, and he can do that, and so I think he couldn't. The pressure got to him, but I can't see him going back to Red Bull because I think he was unhappy when Daniel Ricciardo beat him. So why would he do it now?
I guess he's a bit older now, though, isn't he? I think he probably thought that he had a lot more to give, and he didn't like being beaten by his younger teammate in what could have been his prime years, because I guess he won all of his championships when he was really young, and Michael Schumacher was still seeing success pretty midway into his career, and I think that's probably what Vettel thought where he was, whereas now he's had failure now. He knows what that tastes like, and obviously there was a lot of talk last year about did he like being outclassed by Leclerc? Was that sitting well with him? But to be honest, I think now he might be in a situation where he just wants to be in an environment that's welcoming to him. I mean, he still goes and has lunch with Christian Horner and Helmut Marko, and he's very often in the Red Bull motorhome, very often going there when he's had bad races and things. So I think the environment that Ferrari has built maybe just wasn't one that he wants to be a part of anymore, but he still wants to train. I mean, Red Bull is hardly non-competitive, is it? I think you make a valid point about the Verstappen pairing, and maybe he wouldn't get on well with that. But I think right now he just wants to leave the environment that Ferrari has built, and go try something new, or go try something that feels more like home, which is what a lot of people are describing a potential move to Red Bull being like. But if anything, I think it's unfair on Alex Albon, really. Nobody seems to be talking about the fact that, hang on a second, Alex has that seat right now. What's going to happen to Alex? Is he going to get demoted back to AlphaTauri, and then are we going to see Kvyat demoted again? Who knows? There's a lot of things at play here, I think.
I mean, I don't like the whole politics that go on at Red Bull, because even when Kvyat was in the Red Bull, he had one or maybe two bad races, and then he gets demoted and Max promoted, but the one thing that I couldn't understand is, I mean, if I was Kvyat, I wouldn't have gone back to Toro Rosso, what is now AlphaTauri, because I think they mucked him about too much.
They might have done, but if that's the only seat going in a Formula One team, do you turn it down? I mean, a lot of drivers have done a lot. I mean, we saw apparently Nico Hülkenberg said no to Williams because they didn't want to pay him enough, and he thought he was worth more, and he walked away. But I think for Kvyat there weren't really many options. Obviously, he went to Ferrari and was their development driver for his year off, and then came back, but I don't know if there was anywhere else for him to go, and I think that's just when you're a driver like that, Formula One's the pinnacle, and you want to be racing in Formula One. I don't begrudge him or I completely understand why maybe he went back.
Yeah, but I think it didn't do him. It didn't do his mental state any good.
I agree. Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. But I think if it's that or no Formula One, potentially ever.
The two questions for you left.
Okay.
What do you think about was Nico Hülkenberg, or is Nico Hülkenberg the most unluckiest driver, or is he the most overrated driver?
I don't think he's unlucky. So does that answer your question? Without me having to say that he's overrated, I just think he just didn't have it in him. There was a really, really good quote that someone gave us for our podcast that said, the greatest drivers get the best cars, or the great drivers get the best cars, but the greatest drivers keep them. And I think, Nico Hülkenberg is obviously a skilled driver. He wouldn't be where he was without it. But there are also a lot of things that, enforced errors of his own that meant that he ended up where he ended up, podiumless and kind of always in the midfield. He never shone, did he? And I don't know if that's just because he didn't get a moment to shine, but we're seeing, Charles Leclerc shone in the Sauber. You knew, or the Alfa Romeo, you knew that he was going to be a star before he'd even got into the Ferrari. Same with, there have been so many drivers where, even George Russell is showing a lot of promise, and he's in the back marker. There are these drivers where you just get this sense that they are going to go on to better things, or they're going to be lined up for better seats. They're just going to have to be patient and do a few years in the midfield. Carlos Sainz is another one. I think he was massively underrated up until he was in the Renault, and then he showed some real promise, and now he's going to be in Ferrari, which I don't know the state that Ferrari's in right now. Maybe he's regressing that decision. But even so, you could see the talent, and you could see the potential progression of a driver. With Nico Hülkenberg, I never got that. I never ever imagined that he would ever get any further than he did.
Yeah, I mean, my thing about Nico Hülkenberg is, when you look at the likes of Kvyat, yeah, they drive for 300,000 a year or something, in Formula One terms, that's sort of way down the paying order, and yet Nico Hülkenberg, who never had any podiums, he was earning 4 million, I think it was. I mean, I can't believe how he justified that.
Well, I guess he was a promising prospect in his early years. When he was at Williams, he was quick. Everybody thought in his early years he was going to be. I guess that's kind of going back on what I said before about the whole, you could see Charles Leclerc. I think there was a time where you could see Hulkenberg really being successful and progressing, but then it just kind of like stagnated. But I think because he had that, he probably commanded a bit more money as he moved up. And then that goes with you, right? Once you're valued at a certain rate, it's very difficult for teams to negotiate below that unless you are desperate. So I think in that sense, that's probably why he maybe was paid maybe above what people think he should be paid, given the fact that he had no podiums and didn't look like he was going to get any anytime soon. But it's your stock value. There's a number of things at play when a driver is evaluated in terms of what pay they get. So I think that's a lot to do with his early career that was really promising.
But how do they say in Formula One? You're only as good as your last race or something.
Which is kind of a scary thought, because there's plenty that can go on in a Formula One race that is not always necessarily your fault. So you've just got to make sure that you can back it up and keep bringing it to every Grand Prix that you compete in.
Yeah. So to finish off, at least the camera, I've got a couple of questions. When we stop recording, but what do you think about the whole Renault and Alonso move for the third time?
I understand why they made the move. I understand why they would want somebody like an Alonso. I have to be careful, because I think it's not so much that I don't. He's obviously a world-class driver, and I think that's the reason why they've brought him in, right? He's a world-class driver. He's supremely talented. He could provide a lot more experience than bringing one of their academy drivers through. So I think, to be honest, Renault didn't really have a choice. Apart from if they brought Nico Hulkenberg back. But again, based on what we were saying before, the fact that they didn't kind of shows maybe a little bit of how good Hulkenberg was. Either that, or Hulkenberg refused to go back to Renault. I'm not sure. Maybe somebody will discover what actually went on a little later down the line. But I think it's going to be good for Renault to a point. Even if it is just on the marketing side, because wherever Alonso goes, the headlines usually follow. So it will bring a lot of eyeballs to Renault, which will be good for them, good for sponsors, good for kind of hopefully development. But I don't like drivers coming back to Formula One when they've left, especially when they're at kind of the end of their career. There have been examples, like I think Kimi Räikkönen is a brilliant example of a comeback, because obviously he went away kind of early to midway through his career. So when he came back, he was still in the prime of his life and has done pretty well since he came back. I don't always like F1 drivers coming back, because I just can't think of any examples where it's gone particularly well, apart from Kimi and maybe Niki Lauda, but we're going back decades now. So I don't know. I'm kind of going to reserve judgment until I see him in the car. I'm a bit upset that he's got a 2-year contract, but I think again the politics of Formula One. He wanted to race under the new regulations in the new era of Formula One, so he probably negotiated that. But it does a little bit make a mockery of the Renault Driver Academy, because they're putting all this investment into young talent, and these guys aren't going to get a look in until at least 2023. So it's a bit of a sad one on that side.
So we're gonna agree to just wait and see.
Yeah,
so
I think.
Thank you, Jess, for coming on today. I hope you enjoyed it.
Very much so. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and I've got a couple of questions for you off camera. So but anyway, do you want to just quickly tell your followers and follow us what to do, like, because I, you know, because I really could do with some more subscribers if possible.
Yeah, sure. So what you want me to tell everyone that's watching this now?
Yes.
You got to subscribe to Raz on F1 because he's, as we've said at the beginning of the show, he's got a huge lineup of people that he's going to be interviewing. So, you know, and they're all more interesting than me. So if you like this, you're going to enjoy the next lot even more.
Thank you, Jess, and yeah. So yeah. So thank you for coming on, and I'll let you know when this comes out, and then yeah. So keep in touch anyway.
Thanks, Raz. I will do. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Speak to you later. Bye.